Welcome, everyone. Being live in Toronto brings an energy you can't fake. But we're not here just to entertain. We're here to get real. People spend a whole lot of time trying to dodge the truth about their lives, hoping maybe if they ignore it long enough, it'll fix itself. But let me be clear, you cannot fix what you will not face. Denial doesn't delay damage, it accelerates it. If there's something broken in your life, whether it's your job, your relationship, or your own self-worth, the first step is to call it out and stop pretending it's fine when it's not. And here's the thing, if you keep finding yourself in the same mess over and over again, it's time to stop blaming bad luck. When you're the common denominator in your chaos, it's not fate, it's your choices. People love to talk about how everyone else let them down, but they rarely talk about how they keep choosing the same dysfunction in different outfits. That's not just a pattern, that's a habit, and habits don't change until you own them. Now, one of the reasons we brought Brian and Steph into this space is because they understand something powerful. Humor is pain with a pulse. Laughter is often how we survive the heaviness of life, and these two are masters at it. But while you're laughing, don't miss the point. Jokes can deflect, but they can also reveal. Sometimes what you laugh at the most is what's hurting you the deepest. That's the brilliance of comedy. It invites us to look at truth without flinching. Let's also talk about boundaries. So many people out there are afraid to draw a line in the sand because they think it's mean or selfish. But boundaries aren't walls, they're lifelines. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. If someone repeatedly crosses the line, it's because you keep erasing it. Love doesn't mean access without limits. It means respect, and that starts with respecting yourself enough to say no. We also have to stop outsourcing our happiness. Nobody, no friend, no partner, no job, can carry the weight of making you whole. If you're waiting for someone else to make you feel valuable, you'll be waiting forever. You have to take ownership of your emotional well-being. It's not about being perfect. It's about being responsible for your own fulfillment. That's when things really start to shift. Steph's energy tonight was a powerful reminder that authenticity is magnetic. In a world full of filters, own your weird. Own what makes you different. Stop shrinking yourself to make other people feel comfortable. People are hungry for realness, not replicas. So don't mute your personality just to fit in. Sometimes the very thing you're most insecure about is the thing that sets you apart in the best way. Let me leave you with this. Growth is uncomfortable, and that's okay. If you feel like everything is stretching and shifting, that doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're evolving. Stop arguing with reality. Stop trying to rewrite people's behavior with your hope. See things as they are, not as you wish they'd be, and while you're at it, keep laughing, but make sure you're not laughing off your life. Humor should help you cope, not help you avoid. Keep your eyes open, your heart honest, and your feet moving. That's how real change happens. If you're the common denominator in all your chaos, it's not bad luck, it's bad choices. That may sound harsh, but it's a reality many people avoid. Over and over again, we see individuals falling into the same toxic relationships, making the same financial mistakes, or repeating the same bad habits, yet they always find someone or something else to blame. It's your boss, it's your partner, it's the universe, but if everywhere you go, the same problems follow you, then it's time to stop pointing fingers and start looking in the mirror. Recognizing that you are the root of repeated dysfunction is not self-shaming. It's the first step to taking your power back. There's a kind of freedom in accountability. Once you understand that your decisions have created your current reality, you also realize that new decisions can build a better one. The problem is, we get addicted to patterns because they're familiar, not because they're healthy. And when we refuse to break those cycles, we end up trading growth for comfort. But comfort doesn't lead to transformation. Discomfort is where change begins. You have to be willing to feel the sting of truth if you want the reward of progress. So what keeps people stuck in these loops? Often, it's denial disguised as optimism. We tell ourselves, this time it'll be different, even when all the red flags are waving like a parade. Hope is a beautiful thing, but when it replaces common sense, it becomes dangerous. You have to stop trying to rewrite the same story with the same broken pen. Different results require different choices. That means setting new boundaries, taking new risks, and sometimes walking away from what you wanted most, because what you want and what you need aren't always the same thing. And let's not ignore the influence of your circle. If the people around you are enabling your bad choices, laughing at your pain, or pushing you to stay stuck, then they're not your support system. They're part of the problem. You can't soar while you're surrounded by anchors. Sometimes growth means outgrowing people, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to go where you're headed. Choose your environment with the same intention you use to choose your future, because one will shape the other. Also, understand this, accountability isn't about beating yourself up. It's about setting yourself free. When you own your mistakes, you stop being controlled by them, you learn from them, you grow beyond them. Nobody gets through life without messes, regrets, or wrong turns, but maturity is about saying, I did that, I allowed that, but I won't keep doing it. That's when real healing begins, not when you expect someone else to rescue you, but when you decide you're done playing the victim in your own life, and it doesn't mean you won't slip again. Patterns are hard to break because they're comfortable even when they're destructive. But each time you stop and say, not this time, you chip away at that old identity, you get stronger, you start making decisions that align with your goals instead of your insecurities. One right choice leads to another, and before you know it, you've rewritten the entire story. Not because someone changed you, but because you chose to change yourself. So if you're sitting in the middle of chaos right now and wondering why it always ends this way, take a breath and ask yourself a hard question. What role am I playing in this outcome? That answer might sting, but it's also the key to freedom. If you're the common denominator, then guess what? You also hold the solution, and that's not bad news. That's power, that's hope, and most importantly, that's a second chance. Humor is pain with a pulse. It's the nervous laugh after a hard truth lands. It's the sarcasm people use when they're too tired to cry. It's the sharp punchline that hides a lifetime of heartache. And often, it's the only tool people have to stay upright in the middle of emotional collapse. People laugh to cope, to deflect, to connect, and sometimes to survive. But beneath every joke is something real, something bruised. That's why when people like Quinn and Steph Tolev make us laugh, what they're really doing is holding up a mirror, and if you look closely, you might see something raw staring back at you. There's a reason why the funniest people often come from the hardest places. Humor doesn't come from perfect lives. It comes from chaos, loss, rejection, and recovery. It's not just a gift, it's a response, a way of saying, if I don't laugh about this, it's going to destroy me. That kind of laughter isn't shallow, it's layered. It's smart, it's telling you a story in a language that doesn't beg for pity. And if you're only listening to the surface, level punchlines, you're missing the deeper message entirely. People don't always know how to talk about their pain directly. It feels too heavy, too awkward, too vulnerable, so they sneak it into comedy. They wrap it in wit. They deliver it in a line that makes you laugh first and think later, but that doesn't make it any less true. If anything, it makes it more digestible, because when the truth is too much to face head on, sometimes it's easiest to hear it through a joke. It feels safer, but it's still real. The danger comes when we start using humor not to process pain, but to bury it. When everything becomes a joke, nothing gets resolved. We get so good at making light of things that we convince ourselves there's nothing that needs healing. But ignoring a wound just because you can laugh through it doesn't mean it isn't bleeding. At some point, you have to step back and ask yourself if you're laughing because you've healed, or because you're too afraid to feel. There's strength in being able to laugh at yourself, at your past, at your missteps. It shows resilience, it shows perspective, but that strength multiplies when you can pair your humor with honesty, when you can say, yes, this is funny now, but it wasn't always. That's when laughter becomes transformation. That's when it goes from being a defense mechanism to a recovery strategy. That's when it starts doing more than distracting, it starts repairing. We often underestimate how much healing can come from a room full of laughter. It creates connection, it breaks down shame, it reminds people they're not the only ones walking through something hard, but it only truly works when it's rooted in truth, when it's not just noise, but narrative. Not just comedy, but courage. That's why voices like Brian and Steph matter, because they know how to mix the funny with the real, and in doing that, they give people permission to look at their own mess with a little more grace. So laugh, laugh loud, laugh often, but also pause to ask yourself where that laugh is coming from. Is it release, or is it a mask? Because both are valid, but only one leads to healing. Humor is pain with a pulse, yes, but the goal isn't to just keep the pulse going. It's to eventually stop the bleeding, and when that happens, the laughter becomes something else entirely, proof that you made it through. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're lifelines. People often misunderstand this and assume that setting a boundary means shutting someone out, creating conflict, or being cold. But in reality, boundaries are the exact opposite. They're a way of keeping relationships healthy and respectful. Without them, people cross lines they shouldn't, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unknowingly. And when you allow that to continue, resentment builds, communication breaks down, and the connection begins to rot from the inside out. Too many people think love means giving unrestricted access to your time, energy, and emotions. They think that if they say no, or if they pull back to protect their peace, they'll be seen as selfish or unloving. But love without boundaries is not love. It's obligation, it's fear, and it's exhaustion. When you respect yourself enough to set limits, you're not damaging the relationship, you're giving it the structure it needs to survive and grow. Real connection thrives on mutual understanding, not martyrdom. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about controlling what you allow in your space. It's saying, this is what I can handle, this is what I will accept, and this is where I draw the line. When you're clear on your boundaries, you stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. You stop apologizing for needing time, space, or respect. And that's when you start building relationships that are based on truth, not pressure. The absence of boundaries invites chaos. People will treat you the way you teach them to treat you. If you don't enforce your limits, you'll find yourself constantly overcommitting, getting hurt, and wondering why people don't value you. But the truth is, they're following the rules you've given them, even if you never said them out loud. Silence is permission. Tolerating disrespect is approval. It's not enough to feel uncomfortable. You have to communicate your discomfort and stick to it. Enforcing boundaries is hard, especially with people you care about. It feels like you're risking rejection, like you're going to disappoint someone. But the only alternative is to keep sacrificing your well-being to avoid conflict. And over time, that kind of self-abandonment erodes your self-esteem. You start losing sight of your own needs, your own voice, and your own priorities. Boundaries aren't meant to push people away. They're meant to keep you from disappearing inside your relationships. One of the most powerful things you can do is to let people adjust to your boundaries, or let them exit your life if they can't, because the people who genuinely care about you will understand, even if it takes time. They might push back at first, especially if they benefited from your lack of limits, but those who are meant to stay will find a way to honor your boundaries, and those who don't, They're making space for someone better to walk in. So remember this, boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself safe within. They're not a wall, they're a doorway. They don't close your heart, they guard it. When you learn to set and protect your boundaries, you stop living on the edge of burnout and you start living from a place of strength. That's not selfish, that's survival, and it's the foundation for every healthy relationship you'll ever have. Stop outsourcing your happiness. It's one of the biggest traps people fall into, waiting on someone else to make them feel whole, fulfilled, or at peace. Whether it's a partner, a friend, a job, or even your kids, relying on others to regulate your emotional state sets you up for disappointment and resentment. Happiness isn't something you find in another person. It's something you create within yourself. When you make someone else responsible for your joy, you give away your power and set expectations that no one can consistently meet. Too many people live in a state of emotional dependency, thinking, "I'll be happy when they love me more, when they stop doing this, or when they start doing that." But real contentment doesn't come from others adjusting to your needs. It comes from you understanding your own. The moment you stop tying your happiness to someone else's behavior, you free yourself from a cycle of emotional highs and lows that are completely outside of your control. You take your power back, and that changes everything. People often confuse love with rescue. They think finding the right person will finally fix the emptiness they feel, but no relationship can fill the void of self-neglect. You can't expect someone to complete you when you haven't even connected with yourself. It's not fair to ask another person to carry a weight that only you can lift. Love should add to your life, not be the entire reason you feel like your life has value. You have to be your own source before you can share that with someone else. When you rely on external validation to feel good about yourself, you become addicted to approval. You start living for praise, for attention, for any sign that you matter to someone else. And the moment that validation disappears, you crash. That's not happiness. That's dependency dressed up as connection. The truth is yourself. Worth should not be up for negotiation every time someone else changes their mood or their level of interest. You have to know who you are, regardless of who claps for you. Taking responsibility for your happiness means learning how to sit with yourself, be honest about what you need, and give yourself permission to pursue what fulfills you. It doesn't mean isolating yourself from others or pretending you don't need connection. It means not making your peace conditional on someone else's behavior. You can have beautiful relationships, powerful friendships, and meaningful careers, but they should be additions, not your foundation. The foundation must be built by you, for you. When you stop outsourcing happiness, something shifts. You stop begging for love and start attracting it. You stop chasing peace and start creating it. People notice when someone is grounded in their own worth. It's magnetic. You stop entering situations from a place of need and start showing up with a sense of stability. That's when relationships become healthy. That's when opportunities come from alignment, not desperation. That's when you start building a life that doesn't fall apart every time someone else walks away. So ask yourself honestly, are you placing the responsibility for your happiness in someone else's hands? Are you constantly looking outward when what you really need is already within you? Because the answer is not in someone else's approval, attention, or affection. The answer is in your own ability to accept, respect, and care for yourself deeply. When you master that, you stop waiting to be saved and start living like you've already been found. Own your weird. It sounds simple, maybe even silly, but it's one of the most powerful decisions you can make in a world that constantly pushes people to conform. From a young age, we're taught to blend in, to shrink our quirks, to sand down the edges of our personalities so we can fit neatly into the boxes others have built. But those boxes are too small for the people we're meant to become. Your weird isn't a flaw, it's the fingerprint of your authenticity. It's the one thing nobody else can offer, your genuine self. So many people waste years trying to be more likable, more palatable, more acceptable. They measure themselves against the expectations of others and think that if they just tweak this or hide that, they'll finally be good enough. But that kind of thinking is a trap, because the more you edit yourself to please others, the more disconnected you become from your own truth. And at some point, you look in the mirror and realize you don't even recognize the person staring back at you. That's not growth, that's erasure. The truth is, the world doesn't need more copies. It needs originals. The people who inspire, who change things, who move us forward, they're not the ones who followed the script. They're the ones who tore it up. They're the ones who leaned into their oddities, their passions, their wild ideas, and made them their power. So when you hide your weird, you're not just playing small. You're robbing the world of something it's never seen before. Owning your weird doesn't mean forcing your personality into the spotlight or being loud just for the sake of it. It means showing up as your full self without apology. It means speaking your truth even if your voice shakes. It means loving what you love, thinking how you think, and standing firm in what you believe, even when it doesn't match the crowd. That takes courage, that takes backbone, but it's the only way to live a life that's actually yours. It's also how you find your people. When you present a filtered version of yourself, you attract people who connect with the filter, not with you. That's why so many relationships feel hollow. But when you embrace who you are, quirks and all, you create space for real connection. You stop settling for shallow approval and start finding the people who truly see you, appreciate you, and accept you without condition. And make no mistake, owning your weird will make some people uncomfortable. They might criticize, judge, or pull away, but that's okay. Not everyone is meant to understand you, and that's not your responsibility. Your job isn't to water yourself down for someone else's comfort. Your job is to be so deeply rooted in who you are that rejection doesn't shake you and acceptance doesn't define you. So wear the bold outfit, share the strange idea, laugh at the wrong moment, take up space, be the version of yourself that makes you feel most alive, because that's where your magic lives. Not in perfection, not in approval, but in truth. In bold, bright, messy, beautiful truth. And the day you fully own your weird is the day you stop living for others and start living for real. Stop arguing with reality. You'll lose 100% of the time. The more you resist what is, the more you suffer. That doesn't mean you have to like what's happening or pretend it's fair. But you do have to accept that it is happening. Too many people spend their energy trying to undo the past, rewrite what's already been written, or wish things were different instead of dealing with them as they are. That mental tug-of-war doesn't lead to peace, it leads to exhaustion. Acceptance is not weakness, it's strength, it's clarity, it's the starting point for change. When you argue with reality, you're living in a fantasy version of life where things are the way you think they should be, instead of facing what's actually in front of you. And that gap between how things are and how you think they should be is the space where pain festers. You get stuck in loops of blame, resentment, denial, and frustration. Nothing changes in that space except your own mental health. The moment you accept reality for what it is, you stop wasting time and start figuring out what to do next. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean saying, I'm okay with this, especially when what's happening is unjust, painful, or disappointing. It means acknowledging, this is where I am right now. That's how you regain your power. You can't make smart decisions based on lies or illusions. You can only make progress when you deal in facts. Pretending something isn't real doesn't make it go away. It just keeps you stuck in neutral while life moves forward without you. A big reason people resist acceptance is because they think it means giving up, but the opposite is true. It's not surrender, it's strategy. When you stop wasting energy on fighting reality, you can finally channel that energy into something useful. You can start planning, healing, rebuilding. You can have the hard conversation, make the bold decision, or take the scary step. But you can't do any of that until you accept what is. You have to name the truth before you can change it. It's okay to grieve reality. Sometimes it hurts. Maybe the relationship isn't what you thought it was. Maybe the job didn't work out. Maybe the family you wanted never came together. That pain is real. You're allowed to feel it, but don't confuse feeling it with feeding it. Sitting in the truth is part of the healing process, but staying there without moving is just another form of denial. You have to honor your emotions without letting them paralyze your future. The people who grow, who evolve, who overcome, those aren't the ones who had perfect circumstances. They're the ones who stopped waiting for life to be fair. They're the ones who stared reality in the face and said, "Okay, now what?" They worked with what they had, not with what they wished they had, and because of that, they found peace even in chaos, strength even in loss, direction even in disappointment. So if you're in a place right now where you're stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed, stop arguing with what is. Accept it, not because it's easy, not because it's right, but because it's real, and real is the only place progress begins. You can't change what you won't face, but once you do face it, you open the door to something new, something possible. And in that space, you don't lose to reality, you grow from it. You can laugh your way through life, but don't laugh off your life. There's a difference. One comes from resilience, the other comes from avoidance. Humor is one of the most powerful tools we have to cope, to process, to survive the heaviness of life. But when laughter becomes the only language you speak, you risk never addressing the pain that sits underneath it. You start using jokes not to lighten the load, but to ignore the weight altogether, and while that might work for a little while, eventually that pain demands to be felt. There's nothing wrong with being the funny one. Making people laugh is a gift. It connects, it heals, and sometimes it's the only light in a dark room. But too often, people who make others laugh the loudest are hurting the most quietly. They smile to cover what they don't want seen. They entertain to distract from what they can't say out loud. And when you live like that long enough, the line between who you are and who you pretend to be starts to blur until you can't tell the difference anymore. Laughing through life means having perspective. It means knowing how to keep things light even when things are hard. It means not taking everything so seriously that it steals your joy. That's healthy. That's strength, but laughing off your life is different. That's when you stop taking yourself seriously altogether. That's when you convince yourself nothing matters, so you don't have to face how much it actually does. That's when laughter becomes armor, not expression. You don't have to perform your pain in front of everyone. Not everything has to be shared, explained, or turned into a public confession. But at the very least, you owe it to yourself to stop dismissing it. Stop brushing off your feelings like they don't count. Stop using sarcasm as a shield every time someone gets too close. If you're hurting, say so, even if it's just to yourself, because healing doesn't begin with laughter. It begins with honesty. There's bravery in telling the truth. There's power in pausing long enough to say, "I'm not okay." You don't lose anything by admitting that. You don't become less lovable, less worthy, or less strong. If anything, you become more real, and that realness is what allows true joy to grow. Not the fake smiles, not the forced jokes, not the endless humor that leaves you empty when the crowd goes home. Real joy comes from being seen and accepted, not just entertained. You can still be funny, you can still crack jokes, be quick-witted, and have your signature sense of humor, but don't let that be all there is to you. Don't let it be a mask that never comes off. People want to know the real you, even if that version isn't always upbeat. And the ones who matter, they won't run from your pain. They'll sit with you in it. They'll hold space for both your laughter and your silence. So yes, laugh through life. Find joy in the absurd. Laugh loudly and often. But don't laugh off your life, don't minimize your story, don't erase your experiences just to make others comfortable. You're allowed to be funny and serious, joyful and hurting, light-hearted and deep. That's what makes you human, and your humanity is the most valuable part of your story. Don't hide it, honor it. You can laugh your way through life, but don't laugh off your life. There's a world of difference between using humor to navigate tough moments and using it to hide from them. Laughter can be a release valve, a way to ease tension and bring light to dark situations. But when it becomes a cover for things you don't want to deal with, it turns into a form of emotional avoidance. That kind of laughter isn't healing, it's masking. And over time, the more you mask, the harder it becomes to face the truth that's waiting underneath the jokes. It's easy to get addicted to being the one who always keeps things light, who makes others feel good, who keeps the energy in the room high. People love the person who makes them laugh, who lifts the mood, who never brings the weight of the world into the conversation. But behind that role, there's often a person who's quietly overwhelmed, tired of pretending, and unsure if they'll ever get to just be real. Because once you become the comic relief, it can feel impossible to admit that you're also the one who cries alone when no one's watching. There's nothing wrong with being funny. Humor is a gift when it's rooted in truth, not when it's used to deny it. There's a kind of strength in laughing at your pain because it shows you're not letting it control you. But there's also strength in letting your pain be seen without needing to dress it up. Some wounds don't need a punchline. They need space. They need silence. They need to be acknowledged for what they are, without deflection, without irony, without a smile to soften the impact. You don't need to carry the pressure of always being on. You don't have to deflect every serious question with a joke. If you're struggling, say that. If you're tired, let it be known. You're not weak for being human. The people who really care about you don't just want the version of you that entertains. They want the version of you that feels, and you deserve relationships where your full emotional range is welcome, not just your sense of humor. The truth is, people are often more willing to connect with your pain than you think. But they can't do that if you keep hiding behind a wall of laughter. You can't build deep, meaningful connections if no one ever sees what's real for you. Vulnerability might feel terrifying, especially when you're used to being the one who keeps things fun and easy. But vulnerability is also the doorway to being truly understood, and there's a relief in not having to pretend anymore. Being the funny one doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel deeply. It doesn't mean you're immune to sadness, anxiety, fear, or grief. It just means you've learned to cope in a way that feels safe. But safety isn't the same thing as healing. To heal, you need honesty. You need to tell yourself the truth, even if it's hard. You need to stop laughing off your life and start showing up for it, fully and completely, messy, emotional, imperfect, and all. So yes, keep laughing through life. Keep finding joy, lightness, and humor where you can, but also know when it's time to get quiet and check in with yourself. Know when your laughter is genuine and when it's a shield. Know that your value isn't in how well you perform, but in how fully you live. You are more than a good time. You are more than your jokes. You are someone who deserves to be seen, heard, and loved, even when the laughter fades.